lighthouse in the fog. The fog rolled in thick that evening, curling around the edges of the old coastal town like a slow, watchful tide. Clara tightened her scarf as she stepped off the bus, her suitcase dragging behind her across the cobblestone street. The town looked like a forgotten postcard: narrow lanes, shuttered windows, and a lighthouse perched on the cliffs above, its light dim and intermittent through the mist. She had come seeking quiet. After months of sleepless nights in the city, she had rented the small cottage at the edge of town, drawn by the promise of solitude and the rhythmic lull of waves crashing against rocks. The cottage, painted a fading blue, looked uninhabited, but smoke curled from its chimney as if someone had left a fire burning. Clara pushed open the gate, its hinges whining in protest. The garden was overgrown, weeds twisting between broken cobblestones. She could smell salt in the air, and beneath it, something faintly earthy, like wet leaves after a storm. Inside, the cottage smelled of dust and old wood. The furniture was sparse but solid, and in the corner of the main room, a small fireplace waited, cold but inviting. She unpacked slowly, placing her few belongings in the wardrobe and folding her clothes into drawers. Outside, the fog thickened, and the wind began to hum softly through the cracks in the window panes. Clara settled into a worn armchair by the fireplace, the soft ticking of an old clock filling the silence. She opened a notebook she had brought, intending to write her thoughts and observations, but the words seemed heavy, cumbersome, as though the fog outside had seeped into her mind. As night fell, the lighthouse began its slow sweep across the bay. Clara watched, mesmerized, until the rhythmic light lulled her into a half-dream. She thought she heard footsteps on the porch, soft and hesitant. But when she turned, the fog was empty, and the silence returned. She told herself it was only her imagination, a trick of the wind. The cottage seemed to breathe around her, old floorboards creaking like joints in the dark. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the fog pressing at the windows like a curtain of liquid gray. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled deep and hollow, and she realized she had not yet learned the town's rhythm. That night, the dreams began. Clara found herself walking through the fog, drawn toward the lighthouse. The light spun above her, touching the mist like a slow pulse. She could hear whispering voices in the wind, soft and coaxing. But when she tried to follow them, they dissolved like smoke. She woke with her heart racing, the ticking clock loud in the quiet room, the fog still pressing at the glass as if it wanted to come inside. The next morning, Clara discovered the town's peculiar rhythm. Shops opened slowly, and when people appeared, they were pale and silent, moving like ghosts behind fogged windows. A woman swept the street outside a bakery, but her face was always turned away. Children played near the docks, yet even their laughter sounded muted, as though filtered through layers of water and mist. Clara wondered if anyone would speak to her, if anyone truly existed in this town, or if it was a place suspended in time. She visited the market, small and dim, stocked with simple goods. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with deep lines etched into his face, looked at her with knowing eyes. "New in town?" he asked, his voice soft and distant, almost lost in the fog. Clara nodded, and he gave a faint smile. "Be careful around the fog," he said. "It listens." She laughed softly, though the sound felt hollow even to her. She returned to the cottage, carrying a basket of bread and butter, and as the day faded, the fog thickened again. By evening, the lighthouse's beam cut across the bay like a silent sentinel. Clara lit the fireplace and wrapped herself in a blanket, attempting to read by candlelight. But the shadows seemed to move in the corners of her eyes, and the whispering began again, soft, almost imperceptible, like words carried across the tide. Unable to resist, she opened the window just a crack. The cold mist slipped in, curling around her fingers, and for a moment she thought she heard someone call her name. The sound was distant, sorrowful, yet comforting. She closed the window quickly, shaking her head. Sleep was slow in coming that night, and when it arrived, it brought the lighthouse's rotating light into her dreams, along with whispers she could almost understand. "You belong here, you will see." The wind howled around the cottage, and Clara shivered under the blanket. Outside, the fog seemed to thicken even more, pressing at the walls like it was alive. Somewhere deep in the mist, she thought she saw a figure move, tall and thin, watching from the shadows. She blinked, and it was gone. The morning fog lingered longer than usual. A thick, damp curtain that clung to the town, as if it refused to let her see clearly. Clara wrapped her coat tightly and stepped outside, the cobblestones slick beneath her boots. The streets were quieter than yesterday, though the distant cry of gulls cut through the mist. She noticed the lighthouse's beam slicing through the fog, a slow, hypnotic sweep that seemed to follow her wherever she went. As she walked, Clara felt the fog brush against her like fingers, cold and teasing. The town seemed smaller now, its alleys twisting in ways she hadn't noticed before. She passed houses with boarded-up windows, doors slightly ajar, revealing dark interiors where shadows shifted unnaturally. Occasionally, she caught movement just at the edge of her vision, a fleeting glimpse of someone standing in a window, vanishing the instant she turned her head. She wandered toward the cliffs, drawn by the rhythmic crash of waves. The lighthouse loomed above, taller and more foreboding than she remembered. Near its base, she thought she saw a figure, a man perhaps, or something human-shaped, standing still, staring out to sea. The figure was pale, thin, and blurred, almost a part of the fog itself. When she blinked, it was gone. Clara returned to the cottage by late afternoon, unsettled by what she had seen. The fog had thickened even further, curling around the chimney and slipping through the cracks in the door. Inside, the shadows seemed to move independently of the candlelight. She sat in her armchair, notebook open, trying to capture her thoughts, but the words came slowly, like swimming through molasses. By nightfall, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, a soft murmur through the walls and floorboards. Clara pressed her ear to the wooden planks, straining to understand. she thought she could make out fragments. Don't leave, stay, see. They were seductive, insistent, but never fully coherent. The voice was not one, but many, overlapping in a low, melodic hum. Sleep came reluctantly. In the half-dream that followed, Clara wandered the town streets. They were no longer familiar. The alleys stretched impossibly long. Doors opened to rooms that defied geometry, and the lighthouse's beam rotated endlessly overhead. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and she felt eyes watching her from every window, every doorway. The whispers grew louder, forming almost words she could recognize. You are ours. You belong. When she awoke, the candle had burned low, and the room was cold. The fog pressed against the window like a living thing, undulating softly as if breathing. Clara's heart raced as she noticed faint footprints in the dust of the cottage floor, small, narrow, leading from the window toward the fireplace. She knelt to examine them. They were damp, but not from rain. They were human, yet impossibly thin and light, as though made by someone who barely touched the ground. That evening, a knock came at the door. Slow, hesitant, Clara froze. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. No answer. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a faint whisper. "Clara," she backed away, heart hammering, and the sound stopped. Silence returned, punctuated only by the soft rotation of the lighthouse beam outside. Unable to resist her curiosity, Clara opened the door a crack. The fog swirled in like smoke, and she glimpsed movement, a shadowy figure standing just beyond, tall, thin, impossibly still. She closed the door quickly, leaning against it, trembling. The whispers seemed to seep through the walls, curling around her mind, urging her toward the lighthouse, toward the cliffs. Come see, stay. For days, Clara wandered the town, drawn to the lighthouse, but never reaching it. The streets twisted unpredictably, alleys lengthened, buildings seemed to shift, and every turn brought another shadow, another fleeting figure. Sleep became fragmented, each nap or doze carrying her back to the dreamlike streets, where whispers and the lighthouse's rotating light consumed her attention. By the fourth night, Clara felt the town had claimed her senses entirely. She could no longer distinguish between the fog outside and the fog in her mind. The whispers had grown insistent, pressing in from all sides, weaving words she could almost understand. A slow, melodic chant that lulled her even as it terrified her. You belong here. You will see, you cannot leave. And yet, beneath the fear, there was a strange calm. The rhythm of the waves, the sweep of the lighthouse, the persistent murmurs, they were mesmerizing, hypnotic. Clara realized that part of her no longer wanted to leave. Something deep in her soul seemed to answer the whispers, urging her forward. And that night, as the lighthouse spun overhead, she dreamt of a figure waiting at its base, tall, pale, with eyes like the fog itself, and she felt a strange longing to follow. Clara awoke to the soft, insistent hum of the fog. It pressed against the cottage windows, curling in like slow smoke. She rose, sensing that something had shifted overnight. The whispers were louder now, clearer, almost deliberate. Clara, come come see. They threaded through her thoughts, gentle but irresistible. Even her heartbeat seemed to echo the cadence of the fog itself. She dressed quickly and stepped outside. The town seemed different in the muted gray morning light. Alleys she remembered were gone, replaced by narrow passages that twisted impossibly. The buildings leaned at odd angles, doors and windows, appearing where she knew none existed before. Her footsteps echoed unnaturally, bouncing off unseen walls. And yet, she felt compelled to walk, to follow the pull of the whispers that drifted through the air like tendrils of mist. The lighthouse dominated the horizon, taller, darker, and more imposing than she had remembered. Its light rotated slowly, sweeping across the town in deliberate arcs. Clara approached, noticing details she had not before. The weathered stone stairs that spiraled along the cliffside, the cracks in the walls that seemed to form shapes, almost faces, staring at her. She paused, sensing she was not alone. Movement flitted at the edge of her vision. Shadows, thin and elongated, danced across the fog, vanishing when she turned her gaze directly toward them. Clara's heart quickened, a mixture of fear and fascination. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere now, overlapping voices coaxing her forward. Almost, close, see, belong. Each word pulled her further along the winding path to the lighthouse. By mid-afternoon, Clara reached the cliffs. The waves crashed far below, a relentless, hypnotic rhythm that matched the cadence of the whispers. The fog wrapped around her like a living cloak, damp and cold, yet strangely comforting. She stepped closer to the edge, peering down. For a moment, she thought she saw figures moving beneath the water, pale and indistinct, rising and falling with the rhythm of the tide. Then they were gone. The lighthouse door loomed before her. Its heavy wood was weathered and scarred, the handle slick with condensation. She reached out, hesitated, then pushed it open. The interior smelled of damp stone and salt. A spiral staircase wound upward, each step creaking softly. She ascended slowly, the whispers growing stronger, more coherent. Almost, see, come stay. They were not threatening, they were welcoming, inviting her deeper into the lighthouse's heart. Halfway up the staircase, Clara glimpsed a figure, a tall, thin silhouette that seemed part shadow, part mist, standing on a landing above her. It did not move, did not speak, yet she felt it watching her, guiding her upward. Her pulse raced, yet she climbed, each step echoing through the stone shaft like a heartbeat. At the top, the lantern room opened before her. The circular glass walls distorted the fog outside, bending it into swirling patterns. And there, in the center, stood the figure fully revealed, a pale woman, thin as the fog itself, her eyes reflecting the lighthouse's beam. She extended a hand. Clara felt no fear, only an irresistible pull, as if recognition and belonging radiated from her. The whispers intensified, now surrounding her, wrapping around her mind like warm water. You belong, see ours. Clara stepped forward, and the pale woman's hand met hers. In that moment, the fog outside pressed closer, enveloping the lighthouse, the town, and Clara herself. Time seemed to stretch, the rotation of the beam slowing to a crawl, and for the first time, Clara felt truly at peace. And yet, as the whispers sang through her, a subtle unease lingered, a hint that what awaited beyond the fog was not merely comfort, but something deeper, something eternal. She realized that she could no longer distinguish between the fog outside and the fog inside her mind. Shapes, shadows, and whispers intertwined until she could not tell which were real. The lighthouse's light swept across the cliffs again, and the figures in the fog became clearer, tall, thin shapes emerging from the mist, all watching, waiting, patient. Clara's heart beat in time with the waves and the light. She felt herself drawn outward, as if the edge of the cliff and the pull of the fog would merge, and she would become part of the town itself, part of the whispers, part of the eternal rhythm of the lighthouse. By nightfall, the lighthouse glowed in the fog like a beacon. Clara sat near its base, the wind carrying the soft, endless hum of the voices around her. She closed her eyes, letting the whispers lull her into a deep, dreamlike calm. For the first time, sleep came fully, pulling her into a world where fog and shadow, lighthouse and whispers became one. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of consciousness, she felt the figures watching, guiding, waiting for the final step, the final surrender. The night stretched endlessly, but Clara felt no fear, only a gentle surrender to the whispers that filled the lighthouse. The fog outside pressed against the glass in thick, curling tendrils, bending and swirling in shapes she could no longer decipher. Shadows moved inside the room with a soft, deliberate rhythm, as though the very air were alive, breathing alongside her. Clara rose slowly and stepped toward the edge of the lantern room. The town below lay, hidden beneath a dense blanket of mist. The cobblestones and rooftops vanished into the luminous gray. From this height, the lighthouse's beam seemed slower, deliberate, almost sentient. It swept across the fog, cutting through the veil in long arcs, illuminating figures that had been watching her all along, tall, thin silhouettes, faintly glowing, standing motionless among the mist. The pale woman from before appeared beside her, silent, her hand extended again. Clara did not hesitate this time. As her fingers touched the misty hand, the whispers surged, surrounding her completely, filling every corner of her mind. "You are ours. You belong, see." The voices were both a lullaby and a gentle command, and Clara felt herself dissolving into the fog, yet without fear, without resistance. The world below seemed to shimmer and bend. Streets twisted impossibly. Rooftops merged into clouds of mist, and the figures moved in slow, mesmerizing patterns. Time stretched and flattened. Past, present, and future became a single, undisturbed moment. Clara realized she had never truly been alone. The town had been waiting always, and now she was part of it. A soft glow surrounded her as the fog thickened, luminous and alive. She drifted forward, stepping not onto the stone floor, but into the fog itself. The pale figures reached for her, and she met them halfway, each touch a warm pulse of belonging. The lighthouse's beams swept endlessly, illuminating the mist, the cliffs, and the sea beyond. It became a beacon not just for ships, but for those drawn to the town, to the fog, to the endless rhythm that bound them together. Clara felt the whispers weave into her soul, soft but inescapable. Memories of her city life, the sleepless nights, the chaos, all faded like distant echoes. The fog carried her, lifting her weightlessly, until she floated above the cliffs, above the waves, completely enveloped in the luminous mist. She was not afraid. The fog was warm, alive, and welcoming. Beneath her, the town slumbered in silence, a ghostly place suspended between worlds. The lighthouse rotated, sweeping its light over streets that would never age, over alleys that twisted endlessly, over the waves that crashed without pause. And Clara, now part of the town, part of the fog, part of the whispers, felt an eternal calm. She drifted among the figures, moving in the rhythm of the waves and the light, becoming one with the town she had sought for solitude. No doors, no windows, no boundaries existed anymore, only the fog, the whispers, and the lighthouse's patient glow. Time was nothing. She was nothing. And yet, she was everything. Part of the town, part of the mist, part of the eternal, gentle rhythm that promised both peace and endless fascination. As the night stretched on, the fog shivered softly, curling around every corner of the lighthouse and the cliffs. The whispers softened, like a lullaby sung just for her. And somewhere, deep within the mist, Clara realized she was finally home, at last at peace, carried forever on the luminous tides of the fog. The lighthouse continued its endless sweep, the town and its shadows eternal, and Clara, now a part of it, drifted into the final calm. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories to fall asleep to.